Welcome back, everybody, to the Below Average Joe's MMA podcast. If you hear any noises, I promise it's not me, nor my neighbors, nor my roommate. It's the hardworking men of America have decided to reshingle the roof on today of all days. So,
of course, and at this certain time slot.
Now, me and Dom have been talking for quite a while off recording, and I have not heard them at all. So I think they might have been on lunch, which makes me worried that they're about to come back.
Yeah.
So
we're gonna speed run through this episode. No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly, and we got trains out there, which I can hear one approaching right now. Of course, great timing. There's just a lot of noises in my neck of the woods, people.
Yeah,
that's what you get in a town such as this.
Yes.
Whether it's the kids making a ruckus, whether it's the damn trains, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But Dominic, you're in a bit more of a quieter part of the Midwest, as in 2.5 hours south of me. So tell me, what's going on, man? Like back home, is anything crazy going on? Anything going on with you?
Nothing too crazy, man. It's been a busy week in school for my grad school class I'm currently in. We've had a group project. Then we have an exam this week, and we have an individual video presentation, all within 7 days of one another. So there's kind of a lot going on. But the pro to this is that once this week's done, the last 4 weeks are relatively easy. So I'll take it, man. But it's been a busy week, obviously, with that and work. But we're back here in the studio now. We're getting the weekend started the right way. We're talking some fights. We're catching up. Noah, how has your week been as we get in to episode 159?
We are 30 days. Well, from when we're recording this, to my graduation date. It finally happened.
Everybody say congratulations in the comments below.
Fun fact, me and Dominic started our undergrad the exact same time.
This is
and
true.
I will be graduating my undergrad 2 years after he did. So
this is true.
Not sure what that says about me or him for that matter, but I'll let you guys make your own assumptions. Let us know in the comments. What do you think that means?
Right.
I'll be curious to hear. But let's get into those fight announcements because I'm smart enough to talk about this. And that's with a nice fight at light heavyweight is what we got for you. Number 5, Thiago Santos Maheta. It's back.
The hammer.
He did have his bounce back.
He got a win.
He got a win over Johnny Walker, as loose of a term as I'll use. And he's going up against number 6, Magomed Ankalaev, who does not seem to be slowing down at any point in time. Dominic, we know that Thiago has looked a little lackluster in his last few outings, even though he did get a nice win, at least, I guess, record-wise bounce back. But for Ankalaev here with the win, is he looking at a potential title shot?
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I called for it after UFC 267. I said one more win, and I'm ready for him to be there. So I can't back on it now. I'm going with it, especially if he can come out and put on a really stellar performance against a tough guy like Thiago. If he can finish Thiago Santos, that will say a lot. And I'm not saying that'll happen. This could be an exciting fight. It also could be a pretty dull fight, depending on which way it goes. But nevertheless, it's a fight that makes a lot of sense for both guys. Thiago coming off of his win after the skid he was on. Ankalaev is surging through right now at number 6, the highest he's ever been. It's a great fight.
Yeah, I guess so. It's March 12th. I don't know. If I'm being honest with you, I love Thiago Santos, you know that. But I have no confidence in him in this bout. I mean, this is for a guy who's still trying to somewhat – I don't know if he's still trying to adapt to the times and kind of switch his style up, or if he's still trying to get right after that serious injury he had in his title fight loss to John Jones. But he's just not the same fighter. And I guess that also could be a mark of the fact that he is 37 now and not getting any younger. But going up against Ankalaev, who literally, outside of his lone loss to Paul Craig that happened in the last second of their 3-round fight, which nobody seems to remember that anymore.
Yeah.
Ankalaev's looked pretty much impossible to beat. I mean, he's just been a hard puzzle to figure out. I'm sure that, he'll get bigger tests and harder fights that will maybe show more of those holes in his game. But I just don't have the confidence in Thiago to do it. And in this style of fight, is really hard. I mean, it's just hard for me to see it for Thiago because, you saw like the Alexander Rakic fight. Thiago fought a very patient fight. I actually gave him credit for fighting that way, even though he lost.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with that fight was he never let his hands go.
Right.
But in the Johnny Walker fight, never let his hands go. Here against Ankalaev, he's going to get picked apart if he does not come out and have a more aggressive style. Ankalaev can play the patience game all day.
Mm-hmm.
So I need Santos to be Maheta. I need him to show a little bit of something.
Right.
Really try to get in there and force the issue. And obviously that's a dangerous game to play because you might get might get picked from a distance and perhaps just countered the whole time. But I'm telling you, if Thiago really is serious about continuing to compete at the top of this division, he's got to show me more than he's been up to this point.
Yeah, needs a big statement win,
Yeah, so that's why it's like, sure, it's a good matchup. Like, it's a matchup that probably should happen. But, I mean, would you disagree if I told you that on paper this almost comes off like Santos being kind of fed to the young up-and-comer?
No, I agree for sure. I mean, Ankalaev is surging much like his the lightweight Islam Makhachev. They kind of surge together at the same time through their divisions. That's what this reminds me of here.
Mm-hmm. That's going to wrap it up for those fight announcements. And before we get into the UFC card that's happening Saturday, we got some stuff that we missed. And that's going to start with the highly decorated collegiate and amateur wrestler Jordan Burroughs. Spoke out about his interest in a potential MMA fight. First tweeting and then going on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani to kind of elaborate on it. Basically, the gist of it is that he is interested and serious about pursuing an MMA fight before it's all said and done. He is currently training for his last Olympic Games. I'm blanking on what year that is, but whatever.
24?
Is that what it is?
Something like that.
I don't know. Okay. But he said after that he would really like to, or I don't know, before that. I don't know what the timing is, but before it's all said and done, he wants to have competed at MMA. And me and Dominic, I'm sure, are both going to say that we'd be completely on board with that because obviously he is very decorated as a wrestler, so he should be able to compete at a pretty high level as long as he rounds out the rest of his skills. So because of that, it's not really the direction I'm going to take this discussion. I just think it's caught my eye that some of these crossover athletes have begun popping up a little more frequently as of late. You have Jordan Burroughs here. Gable Steveson ultimately signed with the WWE, but he had an interest in Bellator and the UFC for a minute. And even a guy like Alex Pereira, who just made his debut as one of the most decorated kickboxers of all time. And now people are even calling for him to compete with Israel Adesanya, who had some wars with in kickboxing. So in order to go to the source, like, okay, these crossover athletes, where did this all start? Well, it all started with the most successful of the bunch, and that's Brock Lesnar.
That's right.
Brock Lesnar was a highly skilled collegiate wrestler who started in WWE, became a big star there. I mean, that was our introduction to Brock Lesnar was with WWE. Yeah. He was the next big thing. He was a freak, WWE champion. The guy was literally built of granite. I mean, he was the most intimidating guy on the whole roster. Leaves prematurely in pursuit of an NFL career, a sport he had not played since high school, made the team into the preseason and ultimately did get cut, and then says, well, now I'm going to be a mixed martial artist. So
a man of many trades.
And what's so interesting is he wins his debut, Dynamite USA, and then immediately goes into the UFC where he loses his debut to Frank Mir, a fight he looked really good in.
Yeah.
Steve Mazzagatti kind of butchered it, but he gets caught in a heel hook. Or was it a knee bar? I don't remember.
It was a heel hook. Yeah.
Okay. By Frank Mir. Then comes back and dominates Heath Herring, who, look, I've been watching through a lot of the old Pride cards right now for you guys, if you care. But Heath Herring's a fucking animal.
Oh, yeah,
so
he was a beast.
Just because his UFC run was a bit meh, in Pride, that dude could fucking fight.
Yeah.
And Brock Lesnar treated him like he couldn't.
Steamrolled him.
And then after that win, he gets a title shot with Randy Couture, knocks out Randy Couture, and becomes the heavyweight champion of the world with the, I guess, record of 3-1 as a professional MMA athlete. So my point, Dominic, is we're seeing these crossover athletes popping up a little bit more recently. And I just want to get into a discussion about, how realistic is it for these kind of athletes to, make the kind of impact that Brock did on the UFC, not necessarily in like a financial side, because Brock, that's just hard to replicate. Yeah. But in terms of being able to come in and quickly rise through the ranks, is that plausible in today's UFC, or has that just become much harder?
It's possible, but yes, it is so much harder because you look at the time when Brock did this, and yet, the heavyweight division wasn't in like the best state, and he was this freak of nature that was just an amazing wrestler, but he carried the power in his hand to be a threat on the feet. But nowadays, man, you look at the heavyweight division right now, it's the healthiest it's maybe ever been. There's so many different guys with so many different skill sets. I mean, we're about to see Zingano versus Gon in January. That's one of the best heavyweight title fights of all time in the UFC. Mm-hmm. So, for Gable Stevenson, I know he would be a heavyweight. I'm not sure of Burroughs' weight, but for Gable, I think he could come over, make some splashes. But again, can you put it all together, especially with being in the WWE? Burroughs, a very amazing wrestler in his own right, preparing for another Olympic Games here. So really, almost just as accomplished as Brock Lesnar, if not more so, in the wrestling world of things, collegiately and amateur. But in terms of making a splash, man, it's so hard to see any of these guys ever reach the heights that Brock did. And if they do, that's quite an amazing story because, like I said, the evolution of the fight game has just changed so much since, 2008? I don't even remember when Brock debuted in the UFC.
2009, something
so,
like that.
You look at it now over a decade later, and it's just so much different. Now, granted, Gable Stevenson and Burroughs, they're improved athletes as well as what Brock would have been. So, it's definitely enticing, intriguing. I don't necessarily think a star, as you said, we weren't really getting into the money side of things. So I don't see that happening. But success, I don't want to rule it out as a possibility. It's just a matter of you have to dedicate your craft once you're done with wrestling to really catching up on all these other skill sets, man. Because if you just come in as a wrestler in the current state of the UFC and MMA in general, no matter what organization, you're likely going to struggle, at least when you get thrown into your biggest tests.
Well, see, I'm sure you just forgot to mention this guy, but I feel like the one who's the closest to replicating that is Alex Vieira. He won his debut. Yes, he comes from kickboxing, which is another form of mixed martial arts, but he had that big splash debut just a week or two ago against Andreas Michailidis. And due to, he had that amazing background in kickboxing where he had 2 wins over Adesanya, who's obviously the champion at middleweight. And after this win against Michailidis, people want him to face Adesanya now.
Yeah.
And we've both been kind of like, whoa, we'll press the, we'll pump the brakes. This guy still needs to get through some tougher matchups than, no offense, than Michailidis is. But I guess in a sense, if he were to get into a fight with Adesanya, it would end up just being a kickboxing match.
Yes.
I don't see it as Adesanya going for a double leg takedown. But, I still just think that I would like to see Vieira kind of earn it by going through the gauntlet. But I get it. Some people just want to see that matchup get booked now because it is an interesting fight. Adesanya was winning that second bout from what I've been told before Vieira knocked him out cold, and that's the only time Adesanya has had that. So there's a built-in storyline, and I am going to be curious to see how quickly he's fast-tracked because of that. Yes. And it's not because of the star power of Vieira, but the star power of the man he's beaten multiple times. Adesanya does carry a bit of star power. He does have that clout. He's got the ability to make things happen in the UFC. So it wouldn't surprise me if, a guy like Vieira is maybe, even though we kind of prefer to see it otherwise, he might be already in top 15 in his next fight. And one more win after that, and he might be already time to face the champ. And I'll be curious to see what kind of matchups he's given. Are we really going to give this guy a matchup like Derek Brunson?
Right.
I don't know. I would highly doubt it. But a matchup with someone like Darren Till, who's an excellent striker, but not really going to be – he doesn't have the credentials of an Alex Vieira. That's kind of what we're looking at right now is how is the UFC going to really try to build that if that's something they want to do.
Right.
So I think I definitely think that's the closest we're getting to a Brock Lesnar level rise in MMA. Guys want to know in the UFC, he could potentially fight for a belt, Dominic, with less overall professional MMA bouts than Brock Lesnar did when he fought for the belt.
Ooh.
Well, actually, that's not true. Sorry. I forgot Alex Pereira was
he's
2-1 or 3-1.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Less bouts in the UFC
yeah.
are the same amount. It took Brock Lesnar 3 UFC bouts to win the title. Are you telling me Pereira couldn't possibly be 2 fights away?
Yeah. Oof. That's an interesting thought there.
Mm-hmm. I probably wouldn't put money on it.
Yeah.
Or maybe I would, because the odds would probably be pretty stacked against it. But I mean, I honestly think I'm not on board with it because, again, I want to see Pereira earn it. I want to see him be tested because we know that there's probably a glaring weakness in that grappling.
Mm-hmm.
And Adesanya was able to weather it. I mean, you look at the guys he went up against, Derek Brunson, and kept him at range and knocked him out by simply peppering him with great
and specifically
shots.
His performance with Marvin Vettori was one of his most well-rounded fights I've seen.
A guy who did take him down multiple times, but he would reverse position or get back up. It definitely says something about how far Adesanya has come as a mixed martial artist, even though, again, we know that he essentially he's not a well-rounded fighter in the sense of his offensive abilities, but in his ability to get the fight to where he wants to get it, he's the best of the bunch. I mean, when he's not fighting at 205 pounds, the guy, of course, he has no vulnerabilities, it seems like. So I just thought it was an interesting discussion. I don't know if there's not really any other athletes right now that kind of stick out to me, and I go, that guy could make, like, even Gable Steveson. Like, I didn't really expect him, and even with Jordan Burroughs, I wouldn't expect either one of those guys to immediately jump into the UFC. Bellator, definitely, because Bellator has done a great job of taking these chances on guys that are 0-0 who've never fought professionally.
Well, I mean, they have Jake Hager, right, in the heavyweight division over
Jake Hager's there. But, I mean, you even look at the people. I mean, Aaron Pico, I believe, has fought his entire career in Bellator.
Yep.
That's not uncommon there. So the UFC doesn't really do that. They let these other smaller promotions kind of build these guys up, and then they take them once they hit a certain level.
Unless you're CM Punk.
That's the other side of things. But don't think if CM Punk didn't beat Mickey Gall that night that he wouldn't have been one fight away from
a title shot.
I guess he would have been fighting Tyron Woodley. I think he was 170 pounds, which is just a fucking that's a multiverse. You guys see that new Spider-Man trailer? That's the fucking multiverse right there.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts on that one?
No, man. I mean, it's definitely just something to keep our eyes on for Jordan Burroughs and Gable too. Don't forget about him over there in WWE.
Yeah. Last one on what we missed. Kat Zingano, who I'm just going to mention, I did say should be next for Cris Cyborg's featherweight title. She called her shot. She put a picture of herself and essentially called out the champion, saying she'd like to fight her next. And Cyborg responded with just a couple simple words, and it was January, period, LA, period.
Say less.
What a statement. Even though I don't think that's technically a sentence, Chris. I think technically you got to have more words.
Now we're breaking down the grammatical errors.
Sorry. Yeah. Regardless, Dominic, this fight looks like it could potentially have a chance of happening in January. Is this a fight you're on board with? How do you think this potentially changes or delays Kayla Harrison coming to Bellator, if at all?
I'm definitely on board with this. I liked it when you mentioned it on Monday's episode. Yeah, that's when it was, Monday. Two people that are pioneers of women's MMA never fought each other, at least if my facts are correct. They have not fought each other. Kat is 2-0 in Bellator. She's fresh. She's been, on a bit of a, I don't know when she fought. She fought this year, but it's been a while.
Like
so May. She would be fresh for January. Cyborg took literally no damage in her fight at Bellator 271 against Kavanaugh. So she's definitely going to be ready for January. It's technically still 2 months away. I think we see this fight booked and officially made from Bellator in the very, very near future, if I'm being honest. Now, your second question. what does it do for Kayla Harrison? Because it seems that Bellator and Scott Coker are very, very keen on having her over in Bellator. However, Scott did mention he would like to see Kayla, obviously with Cyborg, but with some of the other featherweights in Bellator, which leads me to believe that, hey, this maybe could work out better. And we talked about this off air, so we're going to let it all out now. We're not opposed to Kayla coming into Bellator and getting a fight or two in before Cyborg or, Kat Zingano if Kat beats Cyborg. Now, I don't think it's a bad thing to let Kayla test herself with a top-ranked featherweight. Make sure she can get that weight right, because we've seen her at featherweight one other time in Invicta. So do it one more time here in Bellator. Maybe get a finish, get a big win against a ranked fighter. Then, boom, you're even more hype behind you and a potential title fight next. So it does make sense. There's a bit of a risk factor involved, and maybe Noah can mention that.
Yeah, there's going to be a risk if Kayla Harrison were to sign with Bellator.
Yeah, still a big if.
Yeah, the logical financial choice would be to immediately put her in a very high-profiled, big fight with Cris Cyborg. That's going to be a fight that's going to catch a lot of eyes that Bellator normally wouldn't catch. But I don't think that's the smartest decision long term, because this is chess, not checkers, right? So even if you potentially that is like the least risky option is to do that, right?
Yeah.
Well, what I worry about is the quality of fight you're going to end up getting, because Kayla Harrison, as talented as I believe she is, and as she is shown to be, she is a level above the women she has been fighting in the PFL, but we still really don't know, like, how good really is she? And I just, even though I think she is damn good, I think she's one of the top pound-for-pound women in women's mixed martial arts, but until she kind of works her way up to that, it's just a lot to put on someone. So for her to go from fighting, I can't even remember who she fought in the title fight for PFL.
Taylor Guardado.
Yeah, to go from that, Guardado, who, no disrespect, good fighter, but not
there's levels,
the caliber.
Right?
And for her to go from that to Cris Cyborg, I just think is kind of a tough task for Kayla Harrison to take on.
Yeah.
I'd like to see her get one fight in Bellator. Even, actually, who would be a great first fight for Kayla Harrison? Sinead Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
I know she just got that. I know she just got knocked out and probably needs some time, but the style wise, Kavanaugh is going to bring it in terms of her striking. She's going to, she has some power. Maybe you test Kayla's chin a little bit, but her holes are definitely in her grappling and her jiu-jitsu, and Kayla Harrison likely would be able to take her down and pummel her there. But there's always that, Kavanaugh she is slick a little bit with her striking, and I would be curious to see how she could compete, how Kayla Harrison might be with taking a punch or having someone pressure her. Those are interesting variables. But the likeliest thing that would happen there is Kayla Harrison gets a big win, and then Cris Cyborg have a title defense with Kat Zingano that we would assume Cris Cyborg would win, but you never know.
Right.
But let's say she does, then that fight's even bigger.
It's a collision course. Yeah.
And yes, there is the risk. And it's like, is it worth the risk? I think it is. Because then Kayla has kind of gotten used to fighting a tougher competitor. It doesn't even have to be Kavanaugh. It can be anybody in that top of the Bellator division. But once she gets used to that kind of level of competition, it's still not going to be at a Cyborg level, but it's going to be close enough to where the fight probably will benefit overall. Yes. It might not add any more pay-per-views at the end, or I guess I guess they're still doing pay-per-views, but it might not add pay-per-view buys to the fight, but it ultimately will probably make the fight overall just better. And maybe some of those people that I mentioned that Bellator normally doesn't get to watch their cards, they might actually stay and start watching what else Bellator has in store,
for sure.
Which is long-term probably a better decision.
Right.
So let's move on from that into the UFC card happening this Saturday. Dominic, we're starting with our main event, a main event that's a little lower, I guess, on the excitement scale in comparison to some of the main events we've got in the last few weeks, but one that should not be overlooked. As number 7, Ketlen Vieira welcomes number 8, Miesha Tate, to the top 10 of this women's bantamweight division. We saw Miesha Tate in her re-debut in her comeback fight from retirement. She looked fantastic.
Yes.
Who was her opponent for that? It was
Marion Reneau.
Marion Reneau, who was on her way out. That was her retirement fight, so kind of an interesting dynamic there. But after some early tentativeness, Miesha Tate looked great. Best we've probably ever seen her. But against Marion Reneau, who was on a bit of a skid at that point, I like this test for her against number 7, Ketlen Vieira. Again, it's not the fight that I personally would have booked for her. I wanted to see her and Holly Holm run it back immediately. But Ketlen Vieira is a definite test because the problem with Ketlen Vieira is she's been a bit inconsistent in her careers. At her best, she's looked really good, but then she also looked very vulnerable at certain points. Her loss to who did she get knocked out by? It was
Irene Aldana.
Irene Aldana, thank you. Aldana was able to knock her out. She's had some moments like that where she's looked less than stellar, but then she'll have a bounce back performance where she looked fantastic and flawless. So it's a good test for Miesha Tate, and I'm curious kind of what your thoughts are on this fight going in and maybe what the implications are for the winner coming out.
Yeah, I mean, I really do like this matchup. It's like a reasonable next step. I mean, obviously Miesha and Holly is a fun fight and one that I think will come next should Miesha Tate win this fight, but I don't want to get too much into Monday's conversation, so I'll hold off till there. But this is a good fight. Number 7 versus number 8. Ketlen Vieira getting the chance to really potentially grab the biggest win of her career, the biggest name of her career here in Miesha Tate, a legend of women's mixed martial arts. And she's good kind of everywhere, right? I mean, she's got good, good hands. She's good in the grappling realm. Miesha Tate, much of the same way we saw in her fight with Marion Reneau, the advancements that she's made in the stand-up realm. But then, she can still go back to the well and utilize her amazing grappling that she's always been known to do. She got a finish in that fight. She's looking for a finish here in this one. She's thinking, I'm talking about Miesha, that is, that if a finish comes in this one, she could very much be in line for a title next, depending on how convincing the victory is. So that's an interesting dynamic I want to take into account here, too, for this one is Miesha going to be so gung-ho on looking for a finish and getting that, amazing performance that maybe, just maybe, she could get caught by the power that Ketlen Vieira carries? That could be an issue potentially. But yeah, these are two very well-rounded fighters, two top 10 level fighters. And it's really just a great matchup everywhere. There's intangibles on the feet. There's intangibles in the grappling. They can cancel each other out. They can still have the one-up on one another. I think this is a really good test for Miesha to see where she's at with the contenders of the bantamweight division, because Marion Reneau, obviously that was her retirement fight. She wasn't looked at as a contender. Ketlen Vieira, still only 30 years old, much is in that contender talk here within those top 7 gals. So this is a very good fight, man. I'm curious to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, it is a good fight. Again, was it the fight that I was kind of pitching for Miesha Tate? No, but instead the UFC went a more reserved route, and that's probably better. Just because, again, she looked really good against Reneau, but, again, we don't really know what level Reneau's really fighting at that point. Even though she was ranked, she's kind of a little bit, definitely past her prime and had been on a losing streak because of it. So Ketlen Vieira is a good gauge for where we are with Miesha Tate, but I think you do underestimate a little bit. If Miesha Tate wins this fight, I think there's a really good chance that Holly Holm fight's not happening. I think there's a really good chance she will be matched up with the champion, Amanda Nunes, simply on the basis of simply for the fact that no other women in this bantamweight division are really doing anything to either excite the champion or that would excite the crowd. As much as I want to see her and Holly Holm have a rematch, I think that's like the fight I want the most in this division. I think Miesha Tate is going to come in here fighting as if she's trying to earn a title shot.
Oh, yeah.
Will probably come off very well. But, Ketlen Vieira, and this could be wrong when they step in the cage, I think she's the bigger opponent of the two. Miesha Tate, I would say, is a better wrestler. But then Ketlen Vieira's got better jiu-jitsu. And ultimately on the feet, if we see what Miesha did against Reneau, that was the best her stand-up has ever looked. Yep. But for Ketlen Vieira, she does carry some power, but also doesn't have the best head movement, the best striking defense. Got knocked out cold by Aldana. So I definitely think we're in for someone to make a statement. I mean, it's hard to say because as much as I want to believe Miesha Tate's going to come out here and look to steamroll her opponent and really try to earn that title shot, typically that's not the case for a lot of fights in this division. A lot of these fights get drawn out a little bit longer. You're probably going to see this go into the championship rounds. And maybe the woman with the best cardio, the most heart, the most left to give in those rounds 4 and 5 might be the one to pull it out.
Yeah, and we've seen Miesha there before for Ketlen Vieira. We've not seen that. So a whole other aspect of Ketlen's game we may or may not get exposed. There's a lot of interesting factors.
Mm-hmm. Now for the co-main event, which dare I say might be the people's main event for this card, is Michael Chiesa, number 6, coming off the loss to Vicente Luque, a fight that where if he would have won, might have earned him a title shot against Kamaru Usman. Mm-hmm. Instead, he's got to fight number 14, Sean Brady, the biggest hype train in the division, the guy who's looked purely unstoppable up to this point. So we're in for an interesting fight here because you got two guys that are very good on the ground. They're very good wrestlers. And I'm curious, Dominic, how do you think that fight, how is that going to get sorted out once it's in the cage? Is it going to cancel out and we're going to get this interesting stand-up fight, or is somebody's wrestling going to overtake the other?
That's why I'm so excited about this fight, man. 2 elite grapplers in this welterweight division, undoubtedly 2 of the best. So, yeah, I mean, for Brady, though, this is a big jump from his prior competition. He's 4-0 in the UFC, so I'm not saying he hasn't earned it. But, man, Michael Chiesa has been in there with elite competition in lightweight and welterweight. So he's been there and done that. He's seen it all. He's a seasoned veteran, 11-5 in the UFC, but still only 33 years old. So, you know, the title hopes of Chiesa are not necessarily out the window by any means, but this is a big test for Michael too. Can he bounce back? Can he stop this young hype train that's an up-and-comer wanting to take everything that Chiesa has worked for? So I really, really love this fight. I mean, Chiesa has never gotten a KO TKO. He has 11 submission victories. Brady is 14-0, 7 of them via finish, 3 KOs, 4 submissions. So, you know, again, in terms of the wrestling, I don't know if they will cancel out. I don't think we're going to see much stand-up. And if we do, maybe it's more so in that clinch up against the cage. Who's going to be stronger? Who's going to be able to drag their opponent to the ground? But I think we could be in for a lot of wrestling, a lot of grappling, a lot of transitions, and maybe, just maybe, a submission finish here. I'm very much intrigued to see how Sean Brady can rise to the occasion.
Yeah, you're right. This is a huge test, and I know we say that, we throw that around a lot, you know, these guys being tested, but this is the true definition of it. A guy that's ranked number 14 doesn't have a ranked win, I don't believe. I don't believe he fought a guy in the top 15 to get in there. And he's going up against number 6, Michael Chiesa, is kind of his welcome to the top fight. And not only is Chiesa a top fighter in this division, he's just, the guy's got a high IQ. He's got that kind of, got a very good veteran to him. He's not just a guy who's been fighting in the UFC for a while, but doesn't have but hasn't learned anything from it. He's really taking something away from every fight he's fought in. His whole, I listened to his interview on the MMA Hour, and his big mindset has been that in that fight with Luque, he looked at it as like a momentary lapse in judgment where he tried to pounce for a finish and he regretted it because ultimately Chiesa or Luque was able to reverse it and get a submission of his own. So I think you're going to see a patient Chiesa in this fight, one who's not looking to make those same mistakes, because likely Sean Brady is going to be the more aggressive out the gate, I would assume. He could also be a little bit nervous under the bright lights being in this big of a position, and maybe he's hesitant as well. But ultimately, you know, I trust Brady's hands more than Chiesa's, which is crazy to say for a guy who's still so young into his UFC career. But I don't know if I trust him enough to where I think he can, like, really make a difference on the feet. While if it comes to the wrestling, you know, Brady might be the bigger guy. He might be the stronger guy of the two. But Michael Chiesa he has really, since he was the winner of the Ultimate Fighter, I know that was that lightweight. But you look at the transition this man has gone under in terms of his figure. I mean, this guy has been hitting the gym. He is shredded now. He's really filled into that welterweight frame. And I would be curious to see, once this fight goes to the mat, is that veteran IQ going to come out? Is he going to be strong enough to maybe hold his own in the clinch? But if it goes down, is he going to be able to win a lot of those scrambles, a lot of those sprawls? I think there's a good chance he does, if I'm being honest. But
yeah,
hard to count out someone like Michael Chiesa. But against Sean Brady, who has up to this point looked flawless in his performances, it's definitely going to be an interesting fight. And obviously is the reason why the majority of the people are probably most intrigued for this one out of all of them.
Oh, yeah, and for what it's worth, there's a lot of badass tattoo art in this fight, too, so be on the lookout for that.
That is true as well. Also on this card, Davey Grant takes on Adrian Yanez. I mean, Dominic, the title kind of speaks for itself. Violence personified here. Yanez has been the guy that's really being skyrocketed right now, not just by the UFC, but the fans love this guy. He interacts with them on Twitter all the time. He's going up against Davey Grant, who's another fan favorite, but a guy who has really just struggled to get past that certain level. He went to war with Marlon Vera, but once again fell short.
Yeah.
So here against Yanez, who hasn't been flawless in the UFC. Like, sure, he's won all of his fights, but in terms of his performances, like the Randy Costa fight, he got beat up in round 1.
Yes, he did.
And came back. Do you think he'll have to weather another storm here against someone like Davey Grant?
Oh, I mean, undoubtedly. I think this is, early in the running, I should say, for Fight of the Night. I think we said that when this fight got made a month or however long ago. And Davey Grant's going to come out, and he's always aggressive. He's very well-rounded. He has a lot of submission wins, but he's a gamer on the feet too, man. He's not afraid to slug it out. And for Yanez, a fantastic, crisp, technical boxer that carries a lot of power to be a 135-pounder, man. And that's what I think I'm looking for here. Can he land the power shot to put Davey Grant away? We've seen Grant be finished before. Yanez is riding high right now. He's on a 7-fight win streak. He's undefeated in the UFC, as Noah mentioned. So, yes, I do think he's going to have to weather an early storm. I think Davey Grant, being the seasoned veteran that he is just going to come out looking to really make the younger fighter here in Yanez uncomfortable in there. But if Yanez can kind of settle in early and start finding shots sooner than what he did against Costa, he may be able to have an even more convincing victory than that win against Randy here. I'm really looking forward to this, how the young up-and-comer can rise to the occasion. And really, it's his biggest spot of his career, because if he wins this, becomes 4-0 in the UFC, Davey Grant's kind of right there on the outside looking in. Adrian Yanez could have a ranked opponent in his next fight if he wins here big.
Oh, 100% in terms of for Yanez. But Davey Grant has never been finished with strikes. He's got no TKO, KO losses. All of his losses have been either decision or submission. So because of that, this guy's got a crazy chin. You look at the damage he took in that Marlon Vera fight. I mean, he should have – I mean, there was multiple times in that fight where I'm like, how is this guy still standing? So is Yanez on another level to what he's seen already? That's a good question. I don't know. He's looked fantastic, but is Yanez going to possess more power, have cleaner shots landed than someone like Marlon Vera already has? That's a tough one for me to be sold on right now. But I do think that, if anything, both these guys possess really good chins. I would actually say Davey Grant probably has a better chin. I mean, Yanez, at least, Yanez has looked wobbled at points in time. And that's where this fight gets real interesting, is because I expect this fight to be fought on the feet for the majority of the time. And while all signs seem to point to Yanez being the guy who's going to get the better of this fight, he's the one with the higher ceiling right now, the bigger opportunities ahead. I wouldn't sleep on Davey Grant here. I really wouldn't. I think a lot of people are overlooking this guy, but he has been in there in every fight that he's lost. He has been right there, and there's a reason why the fans seem to love him so much, and why people still think this guy has a lot of potential, because a couple more fights go his way, and he's going to be right back in the top 15 discussion as well.
Exactly.
let's get into the rest because we got a few more fights in this card to talk about. Let's start with the Joanne Calderless Wood.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah. Joanne Wood going up against Taylor Santos. And Dominic, I feel like we've had a well-documented history of Taylor Santos' rise here on this podcast. I feel like we've seen her a few times. She's now at number 10, knocking on the door for top 5. I mean, number 6 here in Joanne Wood. And I guess Joanne Wood's just someone who's, again, not been able to get over that hump. She's had multiple opportunities where she won, she get a title shot, and she's fallen short. So now she's kind of trying to earn back some of that credit she had before the Jennifer Maia fight. I think that's still kind of where she's at right now. She's kind of in this she's still in this number 6 where she's like there. She's in the contenders. But
yeah.
And if anything, it helps that she's one of the only ones that hasn't fought Valentina yet.
Exactly.
But now she gets matched up with Taylor Santos, who's looking like the biggest hype train of this women's flyweight division. So what do you think Joanne Wood's real chances are in this fight with someone as strong and as powerful as Taylor Santos standing in front of her?
This is a very hard fight for Joanne Wood. And, we know JoJo has always been a great Muay Thai practitioner. We've seen that ever since she came into the UFC years ago in the bantamweight division. And now she's made her home here at flyweight at 125. She's had good moments, but she's faltered in the biggest ones, like Noah said. And for Taylor Santos, man, this is someone that doesn't get talked about enough. She is an absolute just fantastic, well-rounded, phenomenal fighter. She's 18-1. 3-1 in the UFC. She's only 28 years old, and she's on a 3-fight win streak, man. And she finishes fights. She has 10 KO victories, 2 submissions. She's well-rounded. I'm a huge believer in Taylor Santos. I think she's a future title challenger. I've said this when the fight got made, this one specifically. So, for Joanne, this is a very hard fight. It's one that she's, welcoming this younger up-and-comer into that top 5 area potentially. And, if she can kind of pick her shots with that Muay Thai. I thought it was interesting. She said in her media day scrum, she wants this to be a fight of the year contender. She wants it to be bloody and gritty and back and forth, which, you know what? That might be kind of your best bet here because Taylor Santos, while powerful, is more patient. She can pick her shots. She looks for the openings. But if Joanne can come out here and fight a little bit differently than we're used to seeing her, and she just kind of brings this aggression to Santos, that could be a big threat and something that Santos hasn't been faced with yet in her young UFC career. This is a big test for both women here.
So for Santos, from what I remember, she's very good at taking her opponents down and kind of smothering them. Whether it's peppering them with the ground and pound or, she'll even choke you out in the guard. But I'm curious, is that the way that she wins this fight? Or do you think can she really stand with Joanne Wood?
I do think she can stand with JoJo. It's a matter of, is she going to want to, or is she going to want to go to that well? Will she try to grapple, hold JoJo down, look for the ground and pound, look for the submission? But I do think she can compete there more so than what people may think.
Well, I will say, Dominic, that even though Joanne Calderwood doesn't have the 100% takedown defense that you once gave her so much credit for having, I would like to think that she's going to be well aware of Taylor's intentions here, and I'll be interested to see kind of how does that change up her attack. There's a risk with throwing things like leg kicks or body kicks because a wrestler could just get a hold of one of those legs and drag you down. But also, if you pepper her with leg kicks, that could really prevent her from being able to go for any sort of power doubles or power singles or anything like that. It hurts your movement in the later rounds. So I think Joanne Wood is a fun fighter to watch, and I'm going to be kind of rooting for her to at least put up a good fight here. But it's going to be a lot to overcome here with the surging Taylor Santos, who's looking like with a win. I'm not saying this is a win and you're in for a title fight, but she's looking more and more like she might be the closest thing to a real competitor for Valentina Shevchenko at this point.
For sure, 100%.
Moving on from that, and this is really kind of the story of this card, Dominic. Just lots of interesting prospect fights, fights where, not necessarily, Joanne Wood's not a prospect, but scattered around this card, you either have 2 interesting prospects going head to head, or you got one very interesting prospect going up against a more established veteran. And, there's just so many fights like that on this card. And this one is no different because Tucker Lutz goes up against Pat Sabatini. Couple of differing styles here. I look for Tucker Lutz to be a bit of a shot out of a cannon, if you will, out the gate. While Pat Sabatini, a bit more under the radar. I've been I really like this guy. I really like what he's doing, but he does tend to slow his fights down, really try to drag him out into a bit, really try to force his opponents to make mistakes by simply slowing the fight down. And I do think there's a lot of value in that style for him. But against Tucker Lutz, who I do expect to come at him here, it could be a little dodgy, to say the least.
Yeah, this is an interesting fight, man, that definitely is going to be slept on. I mean, Tucker Lutz is 12-1. He hasn't lost since his debut. He's on a 12-fight win streak. He's 2-0 on the Contender Series. We know, you guys know how we are about the Contender Series, guys. And 1-0 in the UFC. And for Pat, he's undefeated in the UFC at 2-0. Altering styles here, altering skill sets. Pat, the slow, methodical, he's going to want to grapple big time in this one. He's got 11 submission victories. For Tucker, the guy that's going to blitz, be aggressive. Very much looking forward to kind of how these two will clash and who's going to get the one up on one another here, because a win here is big for both these guys. This is that prospect fight, as Noah mentioned.
Yeah, it might be more under the radar than the Sean Brady or the Davey Grant Yanez fight or another fight we'll talk about even later. But I do think that these two guys have a lot of potential in this division, and a win here, I mean, I'm not saying top 15 because they are a bit more under the radar, but for Tucker Lutz, I think a win, he could be top 15. As much as I want to say for Sabatini that holds true, he's not exactly winning his UFC fights in the most exciting of fashions, so it's a little hard to necessarily make that leap. But I do think that we're in for a fun fight. If it could be underwhelming, it could be boring, but I have a feeling one of these guys is going to really shine through and put on a good performance. Following that, this is women. Is this women's strawweight or women's flyweight?
This is at strawweight. Yep.
Strawweight. So you got Loma Lukbunmi, who's looking to put on another striking clinic against Lupia Godinez, who is fighting for her third time in the UFC in 41 days. That is a UFC record. She is coming off a loss, though, in a very close split decision. I think it was a split decision. A fight that I thought she won. She doesn't get the nod. So because of that, now she's 1-1 coming in here. But still, trying to stay active. I think that's pretty smart, if I'm being honest, from her. But, man, is this a tough fight to have to turn around so quickly? Because Loma, while still really trying to establish herself in this division, her striking is really good. And when you let her, she will put combination on combination on combination to your fucking dome. And before you know, you just got peppered with 1-2s for 3 rounds and didn't even – nothing. You didn't have a chance to throw anything.
Yeah. But her volume is crazy.
Yeah. So we know with Lupia, though, she is going to look to really be aggressive early, take that fight to where she wants it to go, more on the ground, look for some submissions early. I think that she has a really good shot of either one of these women. Typically these women's fights, I always say that a smart bet is to put women's fights as going to a decision. You don't see a ton of finishes in the women's division in comparison to the men's. But this is a fight that I actually would look at and say, I expect a finish in this one. I don't know who's going to be the victor because it is a very close fight, but someone's making a statement if I had to guess.
Yeah, I envision a Loma clinic on the feet, decision victory, or Lupi takes her down, dominates, and gets a decisive finish victory. That's the way I'm leaning here. Very much looking forward to that. 3 fights in 40-something days? Come on. Whew. You got to respect it.
And the last one, this is a personal favorite of mine. Faraz Ziam going up against Terrence McKinney. McKinney has such an amazing story. I don't know if you guys are aware of this guy's background. The UFC just did a piece on him. Make sure to check that out. But his UFC debut was on very short notice, and he wins in 7 seconds. And now he's back here with Faraz Ziam, who's another good prospect in his own right. And both these guys, I mean, let's be clear. Terrence McKinney, is this fight's what division is this? Is this lightweight? Correct?
This is lightweight, yeah.
So, lightweight's like this talent-rich division. It's like as if we need any more prospects in this division, right?
Yeah.
And Terrence McKinney, though, is fighting like a 155-pound Mike Tyson. This guy, if you look at his resume, sure, you're not going to know a ton of the names on there, but look at how quickly he's disposing of these guys. Even when he's losing quickly. I think he has the one loss, and it was a quick one. He's only went out of the first round, I believe, twice, and has never went to the judges' scorecard. So this guy puts on clinics. He really he goes in there and with reckless abandon looks to get rid of his opponent. Perez Ziam, what I like that he possesses here is he is, I would say, the smarter. He has a higher fight IQ right now. And I think that could serve him well here. He also, as much as I want to say he has the more well-rounded skill set, Terrence McKinney's background is in wrestling. Has been shown his wrestling coach in high school was Michael Chiesa. Yeah. So that's what's very interesting is Terrence McKinney, while putting on striking clinics and throwing power shots out the ass, the guy's background's in wrestling. Almost like a Justin Gaethje situation. So I don't know if that's going to come into play, but I know Ziam's not going to want to eat a lot of those power shots. And I will be interested to see if this fight falls into any scrambles, if there is any time on the ground. Yep. How will these guys adjust, especially McKinney?
Yeah, I just look for both these guys to be shot out of a cannon. There's going to be a lot of high-octane action back and forth. Someone's going to make a statement in this one, undoubtedly. Can't wait for this fight.
Mm-hmm. That's going to wrap it up for this weekend preview. Let us know your thoughts on these fights, any predictions you have, any bets that you're going to place. Let us know. And, you could also leave a voice message and we'll feature it on Monday's episode. Any reactions when these fights take place or, again, if you want to give any predictions ahead of time, we'll make fun of you if you're wrong on Sunday's episode, or Monday's episode. So until then, we'll see you guys on Monday. But Dominic, tell the good people where they can find us on social media.
Find me on Twitter, on Instagram, @DSlee14. More importantly, go follow, go engage, go interact, go leave voice messages, go donate money, do all that crazy stuff that you fans do in the Joey community on Twitter, on Instagram, @BAJ_MMA podcast.
And as for me, you can find me on Twitter or Instagram @NTBaker_. I almost said our below
we almost just botched our outro there. It's fine.
NTBaker_. If you go to my bio, there is a link that will take you to a link tree, right, which gives you a list of links to all the platforms the podcast is on, along with social media platforms. So that includes
is not limited to
the Twitter, the Instagram, the YouTube channel, and Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcast. It's all on there. And there's a couple links for today's sponsor, Anchor.
Shout out.
First one, leaving a voice message. Let's do it, people. Let's all just take 60 seconds and record yourself saying something to your good old Joeys here.
Well, can I just add on? What we've yet to see so far in an episode, multiple voice messages in the same show. That's what I'm wanting. That's the next milestone here. I want 1, I want 2, I want 3, I want 4 voice messages in an episode. Get on it, people.
Don't be the reason that we only have to feature 1.
Yes.
Be the number 2.
Yeah. Don't be that guy or girl. Don't be that person.
And there's a link on there if you want to become a supporter of the podcast. That just provides with a few dollars a month. All that money goes back into improving the quality of the podcast. But that's it. We're out. And we'll see y'all on Monday.